Well, hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Louise Savage of Louise Savage Muses, and a very warm welcome if you've not visited me before. I'm all glammed up today because I'm off to meet Simon Savage of Savage Reads. We're off to see Kate Moss, the lovely author Kate Moss, tonight. She's touring with her book about women who've kind of been missed out of history, so I'm very excited for that. I thought before I go, it's a very wet, horrible day out there. I've got a little bit of time. What do? I'll speak to you, lovely lot. So I feel I'd intended to get through all my bookshelves this year and share them with you, but I'm still only on the third one, and I'm still on authors whose surnames begin with A. So my aim right now is to actually finish off the A's. Let's see how we get on. But before we do, I want to show you something really wonderful. I know that I'm very blessed in many ways. And I have a husband who is not only intelligent and really good company and fun to be with, but he also is very skilled at making things with his hands, musical instruments, etc. Anyway, I asked him if he would knock together a step stool for me. In fact, actually, it was Simon who asked him. We were on holiday together in Wales last year, and so we saw this fantastic old step stool that was being used as a coffee table, and Simon said, "Oh, I'd love one of those so I can reach my bookshelves." And I thought, yes, I'd like one too. So Tim, my husband, made one for Simon, but he also made one for me, and here it is. Don't know if you can see. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? I'm so proud of him. Anyway, it matches the shelves as well, which he also built for me. Labour of love that was. Anyway, so when you see me going up and down today and not having to stretch so far, it's because I've got these amazing steps. The only thing is, I hope I'm not going to fall off them. We shall see. So we'd got as far as Margaret Atwood last time, and there are so many novels of hers that I love. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I've just picked out two that I want to talk to you about today. So I'm going to go up and get them. Up we go. So we have, and down we go. Oh, look at that, such an elegance and grace. First of all, the novel Cat's Eye. You can see that I've got these really lovely old editions because I'm old, and so, you know, I read these pretty much as they came out. And Cat's Eye was the first Atwood novel that I read, and that must be donkey's years ago. I don't know if I've put the date in when I read it. Yes, June 1993. Now I would have said longer ago than that. That's really interesting. So my sort of deep relationship with Margaret Atwood must have begun then in 1993. I would have said earlier. Anyway, it was the first novel of hers I read. I absolutely devoured it. The cat's eye of the title is actually one of those beautiful, I meant to find one actually, I've got one somewhere, one of those beautiful marbles that do look like a cat's eye, and it was something that was a treasured possession of the protagonist of the novel, whose name I think is Elaine. Yes, it is Elaine. And Elaine becomes an artist, a painter in later life, and the cat's eye often features in her paintings. And this is a novel where Elaine is reflecting on her life, particularly on her childhood, her formative years and her formative friendships. And she ends up in a kind of friendship triangle. And I suspect a lot of you have been there. I was quite a geeky child, and found myself several times as sort of in this friendship of three. And I think, you know, often there's always one person who's slightly left out or slightly picked on. So it's a story that encapsulates bullying in a way that I've rarely come across. I think, you know, the feelings and the sentiments and the just the sheer mental weight of being the victim of bullying, but also in this novel, very interesting, becoming a perpetrator as well. So Elaine's relationship with her bully changes and develops as she grows up, and the bully kind of comes in and out of her life. So it's an exploration of that relationship, but also Elaine's development as an artist, etc, etc. So I thoroughly recommend this, and if you haven't read Atwood, this is probably a really good place to start. The second novel that I've pulled off my shelf is The Robber Bride. I love the cover of this. It's sort of, I don't know, it's Masked Ball meets Highwayman, isn't it? Or Highwaywoman, should I say here. So The Robber Bride, again, when I'm thinking about this, it's a sort of similar premise in that the story revolves around three women who are, I suspect, probably in their 40s, maybe 50s, and maybe even older. I can't remember, but they meet. I can't remember whether it's weekly or monthly for a meal together, and what's brought them together is their shared relationship with this woman called Xenia, or Xenia, I should say. I can see on my screen that the sun's come out and it's made me look all kind of, I don't know, a little bit robotic, shiny skinned. Don't know what's going on there with that effect, but anyway, I'm not going to moan about the sunshine. Xenia is a really, really interesting character. She's one of the most unreliable characters in fiction, I reckon, because she meets these three women, befriends them. She tells each one of them quite a different story about her background, her childhood, etc. And then one by one, she manages to wreck each of these three women's relationships with their long-term partners, and then fakes her own death. I know that's a bit of a spoiler, but it's kind of, I think if you read the blurb on the back, it probably tells you that. And I think, if I remember rightly, the novel opens with these three women thinking, each of them think they've seen her. But she's dead. They were at her funeral, so how can she be? So it's about Xenia's return to their lives and a whole new web of deceit that she spreads around herself. And I just absolutely loved it. And there's one character in here, and I cannot remember which one it is, but she lectures at a university, and she is obsessed with her knowledge is about battle tactics and battle strategy, battles over the centuries. And she has a basement, as they often do in Canada, America, and in that basement she reenacts all these battles, and she uses different seeds like spices to represent the different combatants in the battles. And I can still kind of smell that. I'm still down in that basement with that character, even though I can't remember her name. So I think this is a really interesting book. And again, it's an interesting book about friendship. It's an interesting book about reliability. How can we ever fully trust somebody? You know, where do our loyalties lie in relationships? Which is more important, friendship or the romantic relationships that we have in our lives? So I absolutely adore this. Up there on those shelves are also quite a lot of Atwood short stories, and I have to admit, and I've probably said this before, I have real issues with collections of short stories. There isn't a single one that leaps out at me as one that I would say you must read that, and probably only one or two stories that I you know, really sort of have lived with me since I read them, so I'm not going to select those either. So it's back up the steps for me. I'll be back in a mo. Up we go. Right, so next up we have Jane Austen, and again, if you, you know, a lot of you I'm sure will have read Austen. I'm trying to move so that the sun isn't quite so brazen. Maybe if I say, it's better. Put yourself in the shadows, Louise. So this is Persuasion by Jane Austen. This is a very sort of traditional Penguin classic version of the story. I love Jane Austen. I particularly enjoy her social satire, and one of my favourite scenes in literature is in Pride and Prejudice, where oh crumbs, what's she called? That's terrible. The young girl, Lizzie Bennet, where Lizzie Bennet has an encounter with Lady Catherine de Bourgh and really, really wipes the floor with her. If you've never read it, please read that scene. It's just absolutely wonderful. I think it's something to do with maybe my socialist principles and that idea of you know, a young woman with very little prospect who completely undermines this lady with wealth and entitlement, and privilege on her doorstep. But anyway, Persuasion, probably, if I was starting again with Jane Austen, maybe I would start with Persuasion. You can see it's a slimmer volume than most of her novels. I think it's tighter, the plot is tighter, and yet it addresses a lot of the issues that she returns to over and over again in her other novels. I love it because it's a story of well, disappointing parents. So the family, the main family in the story are called the Elliots, and the father of the mother's died. The father of the family has this huge responsibility because he's got 3 daughters and he's only managed to marry one of them off. He is rather a foolish man. He spends his inheritance on things he doesn't actually need. He's not a practical man and is rather silly. And so as a result of this, he gets himself into debt and he rents out his stately home and goes to live in Bath for the summer. And so Anne Elliot, the middle daughter, who's I would say probably the main focus of the story, she obviously has to move to Bath as well. Now she's quite happy about this arrangement in the sense that they rent the house out to a couple called Mr. and Mrs. Croft, and Mrs. Croft's brother just happens to be Captain Wentworth, who Anne was engaged to some years before, but was talked out of it by an entitled society lady who said, he's not good enough, you know, try a bit harder, try for something better. But she's obviously secretly still burning a candle for this gentleman, and she's hoping that because they're renting their house out to his sister, she will encounter him again. And one of the sort of central scenes of the novel, it's a very famous scene, is set in Lyme Regis. Now I absolutely love Dorset and I love Lyme Regis, and I've been there many, many times because I used to live in Wiltshire and it's not that far away. We used to go to Dorset for short holidays and things. It's a very atmospheric place, and this event takes place on the Cobb in Lyme Regis, which is like a sort of pier or harbour wall. There's an accident there which I won't tell you about, but basically Austen, in her very, very clever way, is exposing how ridiculous and frustrating a lack of social mobility can be, and how you know, the social hierarchy doesn't really work, and you end up with people who don't merit it necessarily being at the top. It's also a reflection on marriage. There's a really strong marriage in this, which I don't really remember seeing in her other novels. I'm perhaps wrong about that. But Mr. and Mrs. Croft, he's, I don't know whether he's I don't think he's an admiral, but he certainly serves in the Navy. And Mrs. Croft goes with him. When he goes off sailing, she goes. So Austen is demonstrating that there is a potential for equitable relationships within marriage, which I think was probably quite a, you know, forward-thinking attitude when she was writing her novels. So there we go, that's Persuasion. If you haven't read Austen before, start there, I would suggest. And I've got Emma up there, which is another of my favourites. I really love the character of Emma. Sense and Sensibility, not so fond of. I would watch the film instead, personally, because I think the second half is boring. Up she goes. So, 2 more books left under the A's. And the first one, I'm going to put the other one down, but I mustn't forget it's there. The first one is, oh gosh, the reflection, 5-Star Billionaire by Tash. Now, I loved this novel. I think it's really clever. It's quite a tome, as you can see. It's a kind of probably a summer holiday or a Christmas holiday read or Easter or something like that. The story is set in Shanghai, and the city is a sort of reasonably contemporary tale. The city is facing modernisation. Obviously, it's got a really, really lengthy history, and we have 5 protagonists in this novel. So 5 people who each come to Shanghai to find their fortune, to reinvent themselves, because Shanghai is the centre of capitalist aspiration. And they have all been, are all aware of and take very seriously the tips that a millionaire has been putting out into society, tips on how to make your money. So they follow these tips, and it's just a really clever book, because what Tash does is he manages to expose, in his view, well, I assume it's his view, can't speak for him, but he really exposes the evils of capitalism, and the kind of, it's not just that, it's the acquisitive nature of our society, the idea that you know, wealth is going to make us happy and that you've made it if you're a millionaire. Those sorts of concepts. He clearly doesn't admire people who follow that particular route, and yet he has a really deep empathy for every single one of those characters that he places in that situation. So even though he doesn't approve of what they're doing, he tries to make sense of why it's happening. He tries to put himself in their shoes, and I found that really, really admirable. It's a really interesting portrait of a city. It's very lively. It's a very busy novel. What's not to like? And the final novel, oh lordy, on my A's shelf, and I love the cover, it's called The Hiding Place by Trezza Azzopardi. And I know Simon was quite shocked by this. I think he pushed this my way, and I was not a fan. And I can't even really remember reading it. It's set in Cardiff in Tiger Bay, that's right. And I thought I was going to love this. And it's a Maltese community, it says. I'm reading from here because I can't really remember much about reading it. Maybe I need to reread it. I don't know whether I can face it. The eyes of Dolores, the youngest daughter, we see the underworld of 1960s Cardiff. A life of gaming rooms and cafes, crumbling houses, burning secrets, and a family torn apart. Now, you know, that on the surface of it, that would really, really appeal to me. And I wish I could tell you, because I can't remember, why I didn't particularly enjoy it. It may just have been, sometimes I feel like I've read a series of novels that are similar, you know, that cover similar topics. And maybe at the time I'd read other novels with similar themes that, you know, I actually preferred at the time. I just don't know. So that isn't very enlightening, is it? You know, apologies, but I'm being honest. So the A's, finally worked my way through the A's. I'm going to leave you because the sun is pouring in. I'm going to go and pick Simon up, and then we're going to drive up to Manchester and watch the lovely Kate Moss. So a very lovely farewell to all of you. Not farewell, that sounds like I'm never coming back. Hopefully I'll return from Manchester at some point. We're going book shopping tomorrow as well on the Wirral, which I'm really looking forward to, obviously. And hopefully speak to you all very, very soon. And a belated Easter wishes, because this is the first year I haven't even bought an Easter egg. Can't quite believe it. I've had the family home. It's been absolutely lovely. It was my husband's birthday yesterday. We had a lovely time. We were up late last night playing Trivial Pursuits. Didn't win. Did not win. Me and my younger son were a team, and we were pretty. It was pretty close, to be fair. Two teams. It was pretty close. So yeah, it's been quite a busy Easter season, and I hope you've all, you know, managed to get out and visit people. And if not, I'm sending you lots of warmth here from sunny Shropshire. Take care, everybody. Bye.